I won $52 million in the lottery but kept it secret from everyone. I tested my family by asking for help. Only one person came through. My name is Mia Rodriguez, and 3 weeks ago, my entire world shifted when I checked my Powerball numbers and discovered I had won $52 million. My hands trembled as I stared at those 6 numbers glowing on my phone screen, matching perfectly with the ticket I'd bought at Tony's Quick Mart. After the initial shock wore off, a strange thought crossed my mind: I would tell absolutely no one about this money. Not yet. Before that life-changing Tuesday evening, my existence was painfully predictable. I worked as a bookkeeper at Crawford & Associates in downtown Denver, making just enough to scrape by in a city where rent climbed faster than my paycheck. My one-bedroom apartment in Lakewood was nothing special, a converted basement unit with thin walls and a tiny window that barely let in sunlight. But it had a small balcony where I could sit with my morning coffee and pretend I wasn't constantly stressed about money. Every day started identically: alarm at 5:45 a.m., instant coffee because the good stuff was too expensive, and that familiar knot in my stomach wondering if this would be the month I'd have to choose between groceries and my student loan payment. My 2015 Toyota Corolla had seen better days, making concerning grinding sounds whenever I braked, but it got me to work and back home. The job itself was soul-crushing, especially during tax season. My boss, William Crawford, had perfected the art of taking credit for my innovative solutions while simultaneously criticizing my attention to detail. My coworker Bethany consistently disappeared for 2-hour lunches, leaving me to handle her clients, yet somehow she always received the performance bonuses I deserved. My family situation was complicated, to put it mildly. My parents, Carlos and Maria Rodriguez, had divorced when I was 16. Dad remarried quickly to Janet, a real estate agent with expensive tastes and a tight budget. Mom found her second chance with Frank, a successful plumber who was generous with his biological children but treated me like an unwelcome guest who'd overstayed her visit. I had 2 siblings who couldn't be more different. My younger brother Jake, 28, was the family golden boy, MBA from University of Colorado, married to a physical therapist named Courtney, living in a pristine suburban home in Boulder with their twin daughters. Then there was my older sister Nicole, 34, who'd never met a get-rich-quick scheme she didn't love. Nicole had borrowed money from everyone in the family for various business ventures that always seemed to evaporate along with our cash. The extended family wasn't much better. My Aunt Stephanie, Dad's sister, had married into old Denver money and never let anyone forget it. She spent family gatherings making passive-aggressive comments about my career choices and asking when I planned to settle down. Her son Caleb had inherited her sense of entitlement but none of the family wealth, constantly bragging about opportunities that never materialized. The only genuine person in my family was my great-aunt Dolores, Mom's elderly aunt who lived in a small apartment near the Veterans Hospital. Despite surviving on Social Security and a tiny secretary's pension, Dolores always remembered birthdays, sent care packages during my college years, and was the one person who called just to check how I was doing without wanting anything in return. My history with family finances had left me bitter and wary. When Jake needed help with his wedding down payment, I'd maxed out my credit cards to contribute $3,000, money I was still paying off with 22% interest. When Nicole claimed she needed emergency surgery funds, I'd emptied my savings account, only to see her vacation photos in Miami 2 weeks later. When Dad's furnace died, I'd sent what little I could spare, then watched him post about his new fishing gear on Facebook the next month. The only person who knew about these betrayals was my best friend Luna, a nurse at Children's Hospital Colorado who understood what it meant to stretch every dollar. She'd witnessed my family's pattern of taking without giving, and she was the one who'd encouraged me to start saying no to their endless requests. Buying lottery tickets was my one guilty pleasure, $5 every Tuesday at Tony's Quick Mart. The elderly owner, Angelo, always had a friendly word and never judged my small indulgence. "Maybe today's your lucky day, Mija," he'd say with a warm smile, handing me my usual quick pick tickets. Tuesday, October 22nd, was my 31st birthday. I just endured another humiliating day where William had presented my client retention strategy to the partners as his own brilliant idea. Exhausted and demoralized, I stopped at Angelo's for my weekly tickets, but something made me splurge on an extra one. "Birthday luck," I told Angelo, handing him $10 instead of my usual $5. "Ah, happy birthday. Maybe the universe has something special planned," he said, his eyes twinkling as he handed me the extra ticket. That evening, I treated myself to takeout from Golden Walk, orange chicken and fried rice, my go-to comfort food. I opened the bottle of wine Luna had given me and settled onto my second-hand couch for a quiet night of Netflix and self-pity. The Powerball drawing was at 9 p.m., but I barely paid attention as I scrolled through social media, seeing photos of people my age celebrating birthdays with elaborate parties I couldn't afford. At 9:30, I remembered the tickets and lazily pulled up the Powerball app on my phone, expecting the usual disappointment. The first number matched, 12. I sat up slightly. Second number, 28. My heart rate increased. Third number, 35. Fourth, 47. By now my hands were shaking. Fifth number, 61. I was holding my breath, afraid to hope. The Powerball number, 9. I stared at my phone screen in complete disbelief. This couldn't be right. I must have misread something. I checked again, then grabbed the TV remote and rewound to watch the live drawing. One by one, each of my numbers appeared on the screen. According to the lottery website, I was the sole winner of $52 million. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I spent hours researching lottery winners online, and what I found terrified me. Story after story of lives destroyed by sudden wealth. Families torn apart by greed and resentment. Long-lost relatives emerging from nowhere with sob stories and demands. Winners who ended up bankrupt, alone, and more miserable than before their windfall. One article titled "The Lottery Curse: Why Most Winners Lose Everything" particularly haunted me. It detailed how sudden wealth exposed the worst in people, how families and friendships crumbled under the weight of expectation and entitlement. The phrase that stuck with me was, "Money doesn't change who people are, it reveals who they've always been." As dawn broke over the Rocky Mountains, I made a decision that would change everything. I would claim the money in secret, but before I told anyone, even Luna, I needed to know who in my family would be there for me when I had nothing to give. I needed to test their hearts before I revealed my fortune. The plan was risky and potentially heartbreaking, but I had to know the truth about the people I called family. The next morning, I called in sick for the first time in 3 years and made an appointment with Patricia Whitman, an attorney specializing in lottery winnings and estate planning. Her office was in a gleaming high-rise in downtown Denver, and as I sat in the marble-lined waiting room clutching my winning ticket, I felt like a fraud in my discount store clothes. "Ms. Rodriguez," Patricia greeted me with a firm handshake. She was in her 50s, impeccably dressed with kind but shrewd eyes. "How can I help you today?" I placed the ticket on her mahogany desk. "I need to claim this without anyone knowing it was me." Her eyebrows rose slightly as she examined the ticket, then she nodded professionally. "Congratulations. You've come to the right place. Colorado allows winners to claim prizes through legal trusts, maintaining complete anonymity." Over the next 4 hours, Patricia explained my options. We could establish a blind trust with a generic name. She suggested Rocky Mountain Sunrise Trust, that would claim the prize on my behalf. She outlined tax strategies, investment options, and the critical importance of assembling a team of financial advisors I could trust. "The biggest mistake winners make," she told me, leaning back in her leather chair, "is telling too many people too quickly. Once word gets out, you become a target for every sob story, investment scheme, and get-rich-quick proposal within a 100-mile radius. Family members you haven't heard from in years will suddenly remember your phone number." Her words confirmed my instincts. "I want to do this right," I said. "I don't want this money to destroy my relationships. I want to understand what those relationships really are first." Patricia nodded approvingly. "Very wise. Take your time deciding who deserves to know. Some winners find it helpful to test the waters first." That phrase, "test the waters," sparked the plan that had been forming in my mind. What if I created a scenario where I needed help? Nothing dramatic, just enough to see who would step up when I had nothing to offer in return. Over the next week, I worked with Patricia to establish the trust and claim my winnings. The money was real now, sitting in carefully managed investment accounts, earning more in a day than I used to make in a month. Yet my daily life remained unchanged. Same job, same apartment, same financial worries that I now had to fake. The secrecy was harder than I'd anticipated. During lunch with Luna, when she complained about her student loans, I wanted desperately to tell her that her worries could disappear with a single phone call. When I overheard my coworker Bethany bragging about her expensive vacation plans, I bit my tongue to keep from revealing that I could buy her entire travel company without thinking twice about it. But I needed to know the truth about my family first. I needed to understand who would love me for myself, not for what I could do for them. The plan I developed was simple but potentially devastating. I would tell everyone I'd lost my job and needed help with basic expenses. Only then would I learn who deserved to share in my secret fortune. I decided to start with my mother, Maria. Despite our complicated relationship, she'd always claimed that motherhood was her greatest accomplishment, frequently reminding me how she'd sacrificed everything for her children. If anyone would help, I reasoned, it would be her. My hands shook as I dialed her number on a Thursday evening. She answered on the second ring, sounding distracted by whatever cooking show was playing in the background. "Hi, Mom," I said, deliberately making my voice sound strained and tired. "Mia, you sound awful. What's wrong?" I launched into my carefully prepared story. Crawford and Associates had suddenly closed after William was caught embezzling client funds. The firm was under investigation, and all employees had been let go without notice or final paychecks. My emergency fund had been depleted by recent car repairs, and I was facing eviction if I couldn't come up with rent money soon. "Oh honey, that's terrible," Mom said, her voice full of concern. "Have you filed for unemployment? What about your savings?" I explained that unemployment would take weeks to process and that my savings were gone. "Mom, I hate to ask this, but I need help. About $4,000 to cover rent and basic expenses until I can find something new. I promise I'll pay you back as soon as I'm working again." The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. "Well, Mia, you know Frank and I just bought the boat we've been saving for. We're pretty cash-strapped right now." Her tone became slightly defensive. "Have you asked your father? Or Jake? Courtney makes good money at that physical therapy clinic." My heart sank. I was hoping to avoid asking Dad, and Jake just bought that house. "Let me talk to Frank and see what we can do," she said finally. "But I can't promise anything. You know how careful he is with money, especially when it comes to, well, you understand." I understood perfectly. Frank had always made it clear that his financial obligations extended to his biological children and my mother, but not to me. The next day, I met my father, Carlos, for coffee at a Starbucks near his construction company office. He looked older than his 58 years, stress lines etched deep around his eyes from dealing with demanding clients and difficult projects. After I told him my story, he leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms, a gesture I remembered from childhood lectures about responsibility. "Mia, I've always taught you about the importance of financial planning," he began in his lecturing voice. "This is exactly why I told you to keep 6 months of expenses saved at all times. What happened to that emergency fund?" "Life happened, Dad. Car repairs, medical bills, student loans. Not everyone can save that much money on a bookkeeper's salary. And now you expect others to bail you out of poor planning." He shook his head disapprovingly. "What about your spending habits? Do you really need that apartment? What about cutting unnecessary expenses like streaming services and coffee shop visits?" For 20 minutes, he lectured me about fiscal responsibility without offering a single dollar of help. The man who'd spent his windfall insurance settlement on a Harley-Davidson was telling me I was financially irresponsible. My brother Jake was next. I drove to his pristine Boulder home on a Saturday morning, admiring the perfectly manicured lawn and expensive cars in the driveway. Courtney answered the door in workout attire that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. "Mia, what a surprise," she said with a bright smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Jake's at the gym, but come in. The girls are at dance class." Her house was a magazine spread, quartz countertops, professional family photos, fresh flowers everywhere. As we sat in her gourmet kitchen, sipping coffee from her expensive espresso machine, I told her about my supposed job loss and financial crisis. "Oh my God, that's awful," she gasped, reaching across the marble island to squeeze my hand. "I can't believe they would just close like that without warning." For a moment, I felt hopeful. Then I mentioned needing help with $4,000. "Oh." Her expression shifted subtly. "Well, this is actually terrible timing. We just bought Jake's new truck, and the girls' dance lessons are expensive. Plus, we're redoing the kitchen backsplash." She glanced around nervously. "Jake handles all our finances, and he's really strict about our budget. You know how he is about money." I did know. Jake had inherited Dad's lecturing tendencies when it came to other people's financial decisions. "Maybe you could stay in our guest room for a while," she offered. "It's being used as a craft room right now, but we could clear it out." I thanked her but explained that I needed to stay in the city for job interviews. She promised to talk to Jake, but her avoidance of eye contact told me everything I needed to know. My sister Nicole's response was the most painful. After sending her a detailed text explaining my situation, she replied with, "That sucks, Em. Really strapped myself right now. Maybe try Dad? He's always lecturing us about emergency funds." This from the same sister who'd borrowed thousands from me over the years for various failed ventures: the essential oils pyramid scheme, the boutique that never opened, the online jewelry business that existed only in her imagination. When I called her directly, it went straight to voicemail. My follow-up messages were ignored. Janet, my stepmother, was blunt when I called her. "Mia, I'm sure this is difficult, but your father and I are focusing on our retirement right now. We can't afford to dip into those funds. Perhaps this is an opportunity to reconsider your career path, maybe something more stable, like nursing or teaching." When I reminded her that I'd helped them with their vacation fund last Christmas, she bristled. "That was different. That was a family trip we invited you on." The fact that I'd had to decline because I couldn't afford the airfare apparently didn't matter. Within a week, I'd heard from nearly everyone. The results were devastating but not surprising. I hadn't planned to contact Great-Aunt Dolores directly. She was 81 and living on a fixed income, but on Friday evening, my phone rang. "Mia, sweetheart," came her familiar, gentle voice. "I heard from your mother about your job. Are you okay?" The genuine concern in her voice brought tears to my eyes. I hadn't realized how much I'd needed to hear someone actually worry about my well-being rather than their own convenience. "I'm hanging in there, Aunt Dolores," I said, the emotion in my voice completely real despite the fictional circumstances. "Listen, honey, I want to help. Can we meet for lunch tomorrow? My treat, of course." The next day, I met her at Village Inn near her apartment complex. Dolores looked exactly as she always had, silver hair in a neat bun, wearing a cardigan she'd probably owned for 20 years, carrying a purse that had seen better decades. She hugged me tightly before we sat down. "I'm so sorry about your job, dear. That company never deserved you anyway." As we ate, she asked thoughtful questions about my job search and offered to reach out to former colleagues who might have connections in the business world. Then, after our plates were cleared, she reached into her well-worn purse and pulled out an envelope. "I want you to take this," she said, sliding it across the table. "It's $2,500. I know it's not the full amount you need, but it should help with rent." I stared at the envelope in shock. $2,500 represented a significant portion of Dolores's monthly income. "Aunt Dolores, I can't take this. This is too much." "Nonsense. Family helps family." She reached across the table and covered my hand with her weathered one. "And I want you to know something else. If you need a place to stay to save money, my couch pulls out. It's not fancy, but you're welcome for as long as you need." Tears filled my eyes, genuine ones this time. Here was someone offering me half her living space and a significant chunk of her limited resources, asking nothing in return. "Don't worry about paying this back right away," she continued. "Get back on your feet first. Find a job where they appreciate you this time. Life's too short to work for people who don't value what you bring." After lunch, Dolores hugged me again. "You're going to be fine, Mia. You're smart and capable. This is just a temporary setback." Driving home, I clutched that envelope containing money I knew Dolores could barely afford to give. The contrast between her response and my immediate family's couldn't have been starker. The woman with the least had given the most, and she was the only one who'd offered practical help without conditions or lectures. That evening, I did some research that left me stunned. $2,500 represented nearly all of Dolores's savings. She'd been quietly dealing with arthritis complications, rationing her medication to save money, and had taken on extra alterations work to make ends meet. The knowledge hit me like a physical blow. 2 days later, I invited Dolores to dinner at my apartment. As she settled onto my worn couch with a cup of tea, I noticed how tired she looked, the subtle tremor in her hands that hadn't been there before. "Dolores, I need to tell you something," I began, setting her teacup on my coffee table. I haven't been completely honest with you. Her expression remained open, curious rather than concerned. What is it, dear? I didn't lose my job. Crawford and Associates is fine. I made up the whole story. The words tumbled out in a rush. I wanted to see who in the family would help me when I genuinely needed it. Dolores was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I see. And what did you learn? That you were the only one who cared enough to actually help. I took a deep breath. Dolores, there's something else. Something big. 3 weeks ago, I won the Powerball lottery. $52 million. Her eyes widened, but she remained calm, waiting for me to continue. You're the first person I've told. I needed to know who would be there for me without knowing about the money. And you were the only one who passed that test. Dolores reached for my hand. Oh, sweetheart, that must have been so lonely, keeping such a big secret. It was, but it showed me what I needed to know. I squeezed her weathered fingers. Dolores, I want to take care of you. Better medical care, a nicer apartment, whatever you need. She smiled gently. I don't need much, Mia. I'm happy with my little place and my simple life. But knowing you're secure and happy, that would mean everything to me. Over the following months, I quietly improved Dolores's quality of life in ways that felt like gifts rather than charity. A mistaken delivery of groceries appeared at her door weekly. Her arthritis medications were mysteriously covered by a new insurance program. Her apartment building's elevator, broken for months, was suddenly repaired by anonymous donors. I also resigned from Crawford and Associates and established the Dolores Rodriguez Foundation, dedicated to helping elderly people living alone, particularly those estranged from their families. Luna joined as our program coordinator, and together we've already assisted over 200 seniors in the Denver area. My relationship with my immediate family shifted to polite but distant. We exchange holiday cards and attend obligatory gatherings, but the pretense of closeness has fallen away. None of them know about my windfall. As far as they're concerned, I simply found success in non-profit work. There have been moments of temptation to reveal the truth, especially when Jake complained about his mortgage payments or Nicole asked for another loan. But each time I remember the silence when I needed help, and the choice becomes clear. A year later, as I sit on the porch of the modest house I bought 3 blocks from Dolores's new accessible bungalow, I understand that the lottery gave me something more valuable than money. It gave me clarity about what family truly means. Real love doesn't keep score, gives freely, and shows up consistently. It's present in crisis and celebrates in joy. Most importantly, it sees you as worthy of help, not because of what you can give, but simply because you matter. And in the end, that's worth more than $52 million.